This episode has been a long time coming, but I try really hard not to be reactive. And that's probably pretty obvious since you almost never see me follow any trends online. Frankly, I can't be bothered to keep up personally. For others, sometimes following those trends is super fun, and that's awesome if that's what works for you. Zero judgment on my end. But I find, more often than not, when we get swept away with another trend this week, next week, a month from now, we lose sight of what we actually wanted to focus on the goals that actually move us forward to the life of our dreams that we've been thinking about for so long, rather than just what felt urgent in that moment, most likely from a social media platform that is really good at making us feel FOMO about anything that we're not doing and other people are doing. Case in point, I saw someone recently complaining about how they had to start making their reels with some butter yellow colored text overlay. And if you couldn't tell, that word had I just used in air quotes because it immediately snagged me. Why? Why do you have to? Now, that might sound like a dumb question, because of course it feels necessary. The data Instagram was showing them was that this style of content gets more reach and more eyeballs, so they felt like they had to. But here's the gap I don't think was getting talked about. Did more eyeballs following a trend mean more pieces of pottery sold? Now, if that person's actual goal is to become a social media influencer who also happens to make pottery, then great. Go with that butter yellow text, my friend, and run with it until whatever the next thing is that you will inevitably have to do. But if their goal is simply to sell more of the work that they make so that they can continue making more of that work, well, that's a very different goal, which might make that have to a bit of a different thing. But I digress. If it's not obvious yet, this episode is not just about AI. And if you're like me and you're really exhausted from hearing AI worked into literally every single conversation, every single place in our lives, then I beg you to just stick with me on this. Because I promise this is going to be a larger conversation you can apply to life, whether you have decided to use AI or not. And also important to note from the beginning, I am not here to moralize about whether you use AI or not. Which might sound surprising, coming from the girl who has an entire episode on how businesses can be incredibly powerful sources for change and social justice in our world. And that conversation was way back on episode 217, in case you're curious, and clearly is a through line around so much of what I talk about. But since this whole podcast exists because of transparency, or better put, because of the need for transparency, particularly on the internet, in my mind, I'm going to tell you right now, for better or for worse, yes, I do use AI. Now, specifically, I use it for the data type stuff, like building out a beautifully complex spreadsheet that's going to save me a ton of time tracking the health of my business, or for taking something long form like a podcast episode, hypothetically, and coming up with a snappy 140 character version of describing it so that a new maker scrolling through their podcast app might actually find this show. Or, you could just share this episode with everybody you know for me, and then I wouldn't have to worry about that. Thank you so much in ahead of time. That would be amazing. Now, am I probably splitting hairs here? Sure. There are people who specialize in SEO, and I'm 1,000% certain my AI attempts at it are nowhere as good as hiring a real human professional. But small business budgets are a reality for all of us, aren't they? And do I think we should be covering massive amounts of perfectly useful farmland with massive data centers, sucking up water, polluting entire neighborhoods, displacing lower income folks out of their homes for all of the greedy goals of tech billionaires? Of course not. Am I splitting hairs by saying, well, I've decided to only use Claude because Anthropic seems to be the one AI company with a moral compass, so that makes it okay, right? Yep, I am still splitting hairs. I'm trying to make myself feel better when I put a transcript into Claude and ask for a time-stamped outline recap of an hour-long Q&A session so that our community members can more easily search and find answers to their questions inside of our ever-growing resource library of content. Frankly, I was absolutely not able to create a detailed timestamp outline prior to using AI. And it does make our educational content easier to find and more accessible for everyone inside of the community. But yes, I did that with AI. Anyway, let's get into what this episode is actually about. AI and our handmade art businesses. Or put it a different way, why do we do what we do? We're going to get into all of it right after this brief word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by The Community, your creative business support system with over 100 makers from around the world. With both the practical education you need to make a living from the things you make, found in our masterclasses on topics like finances, marketing, and SEO, plus the emotional support of fellow makers who truly understand what it's like to try and make a living from the things we make. It's like having both a business school designed specifically for artists and a team of colleagues who actually get what you're going through. But you don't have to take my word for it.
Hi, I'm Anna, based in Galway, Ireland. I'm a full-time ceramicist since January this year. I was actually one of the first to join the community, and from the beginning I saw this as a beautiful space for makers growing and evolving. It has been a huge support and network for myself, and everyone is so wonderful and supportive. And even though we are all in different parts of the world, we have this special and wonderful connection I really love. You can find me on Instagram or TikTok, simply by Ceramics by Anna, or in English Ceramics by Anne, and also through my own webpage, Ceramics by Anne.
Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur Rebecca Ikes Kara. So, why did you start making your art in the first place? And separately, but just as important, why did you start selling it? Because maybe when I said the word business in the introduction just a second ago, you half tuned out. I don't know how many of you are serious hobbyists or quasi-side hustlers, or what our community member Melissa calls side saunterers, if you actually think of yourself as a business owner in any of those categories. And if you've been listening for a while, you've heard me say this before, but it's worth repeating. If you have sold the things you make, you have a business. Maybe it's tiny. Maybe tiny doesn't even cover it. Maybe it's micro. But you are a business owner, my friend. Maybe your goal is never to go full-time. Maybe you want this to stay a side passion precisely so that it stays flexible. Maybe tying what you create to how you pay your bills just does not work for you. And if so, that is completely okay. It does not make you less of a maker. But if you sell your work, even on the side, you still do have a business. So let's think like business owners for a minute, okay? Back to the question. Why did you start making your art? And why did you start selling it? If we're here trying to convince people that handmade matters, that it's special, more meaningful than mass-produced, what are we telling them when we present that handmade work inside of a mass-produced image? Because that is, in fact, what AI images are, mass-produced. There's nothing new about them. There's nothing unique to you. Your voice and your unique aesthetic are not present because, by its very nature, AI does not create new things. It creates iterations of things that have already existed before. Put a different way, AI creates copies. Sure, it can create very specific copies that blend 1,000,001 data points that it can pull in an instant and make it into something that feels new, but it's still just working off the endless amounts of information it has already scraped from all of us. And to be clear, this is not a sales episode. I know some of you are thinking I'm biased because I'd love for you to buy a photography course from me. And while I would love for you to buy a photography course because I believe in what I have created and what I teach and the transformations I see from so many students actually discovering photography can be easy for them, that is not what this episode is about. This episode is about taking a minute to pause and recenter ourselves, remembering why we do what we do. So let's think about it practically. How does it actually work to tell someone in a caption or a shop listing or in person how special this handmade piece feels to you? How much time, blood, sweat, tears have gone into learning your craft, coming up with your unique way that you make handles so that the mug is comfortable to you? Why you decided to trim the foot of that bowl in just the way that you did so that it lifts it up off the table in a way that makes you want to wrap your hands around the curve of it like a hug. And the comfort that you feel when you pass that handmade bowl full of your favorite homemade dish across the table to a loved one, enjoying a long meal with great conversation, realizing you have blissfully forgotten about your phone for the last 4 hours. Frankly, I feel warm and fuzzy just describing that experience right now. But what happens then to all of that warm and fuzzy feeling when you're reading that description next to an overly perfect, glowy, slightly golden image of that bowl, surrounded by perfectly, identically sliced fruit that has just a hint of condensation to make it shine in a way that you can't quite describe, but for some reason just feels off. And frankly, is more perfect than that table is ever going to look when you invite those loved ones over for the long, enjoyable meal. So hold on a second. I've just fallen down into a world of dreaming about having people over for dinner, but now this photo seems like it could exist, but it's so perfect. Is this photo fake? Wait, if the image is fake, is this bowl even real? If I give this website my credit card information, am I going to get scammed or am I actually going to get this bowl that I would really love to have? Are these reviews even real? Is this entire company AI generated? And poof. All the effort you have made digging deep into your soul to try to explain to someone who does not make things about why you find making and buying and owning handmade items in your life to be so frickin' special, and why they should also join you and purchase this bowl that you love to make so much. All of that trust and connection is gone. They've scrolled on, and you didn't sell that bowl, which sucks. Because you felt like you needed better photos this whole time, and now there's a way to get better, and I'm using air quotes here if you can't tell, photos without wasting so much of your time fighting your camera or your phone. You thought that this was going to be an efficient decision that allowed you to save time amidst the endless list of things that you have to get done and make something you don't really like to do anyways, taking pictures of your work, easier. But in reality, the art world is raging against AI. How it's stealing from artists, training on our work without consent. Painters, writers, musicians, dare I say, the people raging the hardest are mostly the fine arts. The art with a capital A, as I so frequently put it. Because, culturally speaking, that's the high value stuff, right? Marketing materials like product photos aren't art. Are they? I'm watching makers feel the pressure to produce more and more and more and reach for AI photos to keep up with everything. But turning back to the question that started all of this off, why? Why did you start making what you make? And why did you start selling it? And believe me, I get it, especially for those of you listening that are full-time, working to make a living from the things that you make. It is hard as hell, and you often need to find some way to get ahead of the endless to-do list, somehow, just to stay afloat. You've tried blending production work that you can make faster alongside the artistic work that lights you up so that you can have different price points of items to sell. You've added a fake ash glaze line of work that you can fire in your electric kiln to be able to get more consistent results so that you can sell sets of work and pay the bills instead of praying to the kiln gods that it won't rain the weekend you have planned to fire the wood kiln that you actually love so much. You know that I know firsthand just how hard it is to make a living from the things that we make. After 15 years of doing just that, I had my first ever paid federal holiday in my adult life just a couple months ago. It is a brand new experience for me to work a 4-day week instead of a 5-day week and still get paid the same amount. What a crazy concept. And I do understand just how hard learning photography can feel. I get how frustrating it is. I have been there. And at the time of this recording, I have walked alongside over 300 makers who have been there too, working through how to learn to take better photos inside of the courses that I teach. The to-do list never ends. It's taken me weeks, actually, to sit down and finally finish writing this episode. So believe me when I say, I get it. And yet, what's the point? I keep coming back to that. Why do we do this? What are we actually trying to say? And who are we actually trying to connect with? Are we here to pump out as much content and as much product as the mass-produced options out there and try and keep up somehow, even though we are a team of one, while the companies we're trying to keep up with are teams of dozens, hundreds, or thousands? And I want you to notice, I just said mass-produced options. I didn't say competitors. Because my maker friend, frankly putting it, even for those of us that make utilitarian, functional work, our competitors are not actually the big box mass-produced corporations out there. Even in production pottery, which some maybe would argue is the least personal corner of our craft, and I obviously have feelings about that, but that's a whole different episode, I still don't think AI marketing is the right move. Why would someone pay 3 times or 5 times or more for a mug, or for a full set of dinnerware, or for 250 plates for a brand new restaurant, instead of buying them from Target or Crate and Barrel, where they can get exactly what they want today, delivered immediately to their doorstep or to their car in 10 different colors, instead of waiting weeks or months and having to pick from only one of the 3 colors that we personally offer. Handmade business is not the same game. And we know this deep down because it's why we love it. But it also means our marketing, our sales, our strategy cannot be the same either. It just doesn't work. If we are taking a stand for something, then, in my opinion, we need to let that show up in as much of what we do as possible. In fact, some would argue that's actually what branding is, but that's a whole other conversation. Your why isn't just for an artist statement. It's not just a convincing caption that encourages someone to buy something. Maybe you don't have an answer to that question of why you make what you make right now, why you do what you do. And that's okay. It's a really big question. But I think if you remind yourself to keep sitting with it, wondering about it, asking yourself why, eventually, when you find that why unique to yourself, I think if it's really deeply your true why, it will seep into everything, your product photos included. For me, personally, in my own actual making and creative practice, I am drawn to the process. Whether that's in what I make myself, watching my own growth as a craftsperson, being able to sit down and center in a minute instead of the 10 minutes it used to take me however many years ago, or whether it's in the mug that I'm holding that I've bought from a friend, feeling the process in the object itself, the gesture of the form, the feel of a handle that holds onto the hand of the person who made it and now onto mine. I don't get that from the mass-produced mug I'm drinking out of right now at the coffee shop where I'm actually writing this episode. That mug is purely functional. It gets the warm London fog into my body, and it maybe warms my hands a little bit in the process, although not for as long as I would like because it is a very wide mug, and the tea cools off way too fast in my opinion, and the very strange, straight but also curved handle does not let me cuddle it very well, to be honest. So, I digress. I, personally, buy Handmade for the tactile experience. And whether or not that tactile experience comes through in a photo, if that handmade mug is being sold online, is why you've heard my very opinionated feelings on the stark black to white sweep so traditionally used to photograph pots. In exactly the same way, I feel so strongly about the fact that AI photos have no place in selling your handmade work. But maybe the tactile isn't what draws you to handmade, either as a maker or as a buyer. Maybe what lights you up is the technical or even the technological exploration. The way you can design a form so a specific glaze breaks exactly over a specific edge. The way it moves, shifts, and pulls in a spot that you engineered for it to do exactly that. Fantastic. Amazing. That's a completely different reason to make and sell what you make than what I had. And if that's you, maybe you're already thinking, well, isn't that kind of technological exploration connected to AI then? And to that, I would say, number one, well played. Touché, my friend. However, number two, is the unique way your glaze breaks over that edge actually going to be shown off in an overly glowy golden light of an AI-generated image? Oh, but Rebecca, you might say, you could tell it to make a different style of photo. Yes, I know. But even the most curated of artists out there, even the ones striving for total technical perfection, still have a different feeling in their pictures. And you can't see me right now, but I'm rubbing my thumb against the other fingers of my hand, trying to grasp onto what that thing is. But I know that you know it. In fact, as I prepared this episode, I pulled up the work of friends who have radically different styles to try and speak to this. And as I look at Sarah Husseini's insanely perfect, super graphic, design-inspired pots on Not Work Related, even amidst her perfection, I can still feel whatever that thing is. There's an intensity there that makes me think of being in New York City. And I would be willing to take a very strong bet that even if she had AI put her cups on all white background, which admittedly would be a perfectly good use of the editing power of AI, even if she instructed it to create strong shadows and harsh lighting to match her existing style, something would still be lost. Maybe it would be obvious that the shadows don't match the actual piece or that there are way too many shadows, which so frequently happens. Or maybe it would be something more subtle, an even more perfect image of her already obsessively good pots. I don't know what it would be, but I am confident we would feel it. And I'm also confident you know this already. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you know it when you see it. There's something missing. And while it might feel easier in the moment, I ask you again, why are you making the work that you make, my friend? And does your unique answer to that very big question come through in every aspect of how people might experience your work? These are hard questions to answer, I know. But if we're taking a stand for handmade, let's take that stand everywhere. Even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient. Maybe especially when it's hard, and especially when it's inconvenient. Because otherwise, what's the point? Why are we doing what we do? I don't have a great segue from that massive question to wrap up this episode. And I also don't have an answer for you. We each have to find our own answers that work for our own making and creative practices and our own life needs. And you know what's really cool? There are makers inside of the community together on every side of this argument. There are makers who do use AI to create their product photos and are completely content in that. And there are makers who will be totally disappointed to hear that I'm using AI in small capacities because they have sworn it off completely. What they each choose isn't the important part here. The important part is that we are all still coming together to have big conversations and to listen to each other's perspectives, respectfully. To have dialogue and, dare I even say, argue in a loving, respectful kind of way, openly and honestly. Frankly, it's really freaking cool, and probably shouldn't be so surprising, but given the ways of the internet in the last decade or so, it is really surprising. And it's a major reason why the support of the community that we are building together feels so incredibly special. If you want a safe space to dig through these big questions for yourself, no matter your own personal answers, we'd love for you to join us. Learn more about all the pragmatic stuff that you also get when joining by visiting makersplaybook.com/community. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your handmade dreams a reality, because together, we've got this. Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Christy Kotsavan. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present.